The leaves of the trees rustled in the chill winds of the coming season, their once vibrant greens now transforming into hues of browns and oranges. I stood still, listening intently to the sounds of the forest, waiting for any sign of my prey. The chill of the morning air was invigorating, reminding me of my connection to the land and to the spirits of the animals that I hunted. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath in and feeling the crisp air fill my lungs. The scent of wood smoke, damp earth, and pine filled my senses, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Mother Nature was offering me her gifts, and I was eager to receive them. As I stood there, surrounded by the beauty and majesty of the forest, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for all that the land had provided for me, and I vowed to always protect and respect it, for the good of myself and all of its inhabitants. I slowly opened my eyes and gazed out at the forest, my sharp focus scanning the trees and the underbrush for any signs of movement. I heard a twig snap, and my hand instinctively reached for my bow, ready to draw and shoot if needed. What I saw would forever change me. I am the proud hunter and warrior of my tribe, wandering the vast and wild forests in search of game. On this fateful day, I stumbled upon a strange sight. A woman, huddled into a ball on the ground. Her pale skin and long sunshine-colored hair a stark contrast to the earthen hues of the leaves and the dirt. Her attire was unlike anything I had ever seen before, a far cry from the furs and hides that my people wore. She whispered in a language I could not understand, but it was clear that she was lost, hurt, cold, and hungry. That was not lost in translation. I approached her cautiously, my hand on the hilt of my knife, ready to defend myself if needed. But as I drew closer, I saw that she was injured, her breathing shallow and labored. Despite her strange appearance, I could not leave her to die in the woods. I knelt beside her, speaking softly and offering her what comfort I could. To my surprise, she did not seem afraid of me. I took her into my arms and cautiously lifted her into a seated position so I could better take in her injuries. A moan escaped her, and she leaned against my shoulder, closing her eyes tightly against the dizziness. Other than a few scratches, she seemed intact. My muscles were tense at first, the sensation of this soft female against me unfamiliar. But as our breathing merged, the tenseness released from my chest. We may be different, but we both carried the same spirit of survival, our hearts wanting to continue its drumming song of life. Knowing she could not speak my language, I spoke to her with my eyes, conveying my meaning with gestures and my body. Safe. You are safe. She was dazed from dehydration and exhaustion, but I knew we needed to keep moving. The sun was setting, and the mood would soon rise, bringing with it a new set of dangers in the wilderness. I gestured for her to drink from my water bladder, and she eagerly took a long sip, quenching her thirst. Her eyes were closed, and I could see the relief on her face as she somewhat regained her strength. I held the woman close to my chest as I helped her to her feet and led her through the dense forest. Her steps were unsteady, and she clung to my arm for balance. I led the way, my steps slow and sure, my senses alert to any danger. The forest was alive with the sounds of crickets and frogs, the rustling of leaves in the wind, and the calls of the night birds. As I led the strange woman through the forest, I noticed that the small squirrels around us were acting strangely, their hairs standing on end and their senses alert. I quickly realized that we were being followed. I grunted, for I knew exactly what hunted us. A low growl sounded at our back. A pack of wolves spread out around us, hungry and vicious from a long winter. I unsheathed my knife, prepared to defend us both. The woman cowered behind me, her pale skin and golden hair stark against the earthen hues of the forest. I could feel her fear and knew that I had to protect her at all costs. The wolves closed in, snarling and snapping their jaws. I stood my ground, brandishing my knife and shouting to scare them off. But they were relentless, their hunger driving them forward. I fought with all my might, swinging my knife and kicking out with my feet to keep the wolves at bay. The woman screamed, but I did not falter, determined to protect her. I was fast and strong, my years of hunting and warrior training serving me well. One by one, the wolves ran off, until finally the last of them, the alpha, turned and followed after his pack. I turned to the woman, who was shaking with fear and awe. I took her into my arms and looked deeply into her eyes, thanking the Great Mother for allowing me the strength to protect this precious treasure. From not taking her from me when I had just found her. As we made our way back to my makeshift camp, I could feel her eyes on my back, studying me. I was quite different than the pale men she lived amongst in her camp. I'd seen them before, uncomfortable cloth covering every inch of them. The Native American hunter was a formidable figure. Our broad chests and muscled arms were a testament to the years spent training and living in the wilderness. I wore the pelt of a bear for warmth, the fur providing a protective barrier against the cold. My calves were thick and sturdy, my deerskin boots reaching just above my ankles, crafted to withstand the rugged terrain that I traveled. The boots hugged my feet, molding to the contours of my soles. With my chest exposed, I was unencumbered by heavy cloth, free to move and respond to any threat at a moment's notice. Despite my raw strength, there was a grace and fluidity to my movements, a subtlety that came only with years of experience in the wild. I smiled, imagining what she must be thinking, but I didn't mind. I was happy to have her by my side, to have survived what would have become a grim and unfortunate fate brought upon by the wolves. When we finally reached camp, I built a fire, and she huddled close to its warmth, grateful for its comfort. As the night drew on, I noticed that the woman's feet were badly cut and bleeding. I knew that keeping them protected was imperative to her survival in the harsh wilderness, so I set to work, grabbing and gathering my bandages and ointments and bringing them, kneeling before her. Reaching out, I indicated I wanted to look at her feet. She slowly nodded. Ignoring the taboo sensation of the electric feeling in my chest of touching her again, I focused on how my hands were warm against her chilled skin. I gently lifted her feet and placed them on my lap, marveling at their delicate beauty. Her arches were high and elegant, and her skin was soft as the petals of a flower. I took my ointment from its pouch, made from the herbs and roots I collected on my travels, and began to tenderly apply it to her wounds. To her credit, she only reactively jerked when my fingers brushed across a particularly deep cut. Asking permission with my eyes, I continued. As I worked, I couldn't help but admire the contrast between her pale skin and my own, tanned from years of hunting and living in the outdoors. I took great care in wrapping her feet, making sure they were protected and cushioned from the rough forest floor. As I finished, I realized that her shoes were in tatters and would not provide the protection her feet needed. I took a moment to gather materials from my surroundings, using the tough hide of a deer and my own hunting knife to craft new shoes for her. I used the leather from the deer I had hunted to make the soles, and woven grasses for the uppers. It was a simple design, but I knew it would keep her feet warm and dry in the forest. I wanted her to have the best possible chance for a safe and comfortable journey, and I felt a deep satisfaction knowing that I was helping her in this way. I realized then just how delicate and vulnerable this strange woman was, and my heart swelled with an urge to protect her at all costs. As I tied the final knot on the shoes, I felt a deep sense of pride in my work. I had taken care of this woman and helped ensure her survival, and I was honored to be able to help her in this small but crucial way. She smiled gratefully at me, and I felt a warmth in my chest I had never felt before. As we settled into our makeshift camp for the night, I tended to the fire and prepared a simple meal for us. I brought her a haunch of freshly caught game, still warm from the flames, and a handful of juicy berries I had gathered from the forest. She looked at me with gratitude in her eyes as I offered her the food, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in being able to provide for her. She took small, tentative bites at first, as if she were savoring each flavor, but soon she was devouring the meal with ravenous hunger. I watched as she ate, marveling at her delicate features and the way her hair caught the light of the fire. I had never seen someone so fair and so different from anyone I had known before, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder and tenderness towards her. As she finished eating, I offered her some water from my pouch, and she took it gratefully. I could see the relief in her eyes as she drank. Sitting there in the soft glow of the fire, surrounded by the sounds of the forest, I felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over me, a rare feeling living the solitary life of a hunter. As she repositioned herself by the fire, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a handful of berries, looking at me with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. I could tell from the look in her eyes that she was asking if they were safe to eat, and my heart sank with immediate dread. They were poisonous, deadly. Without hesitation, I leapt to her side and knocked the berries from her hand and into the bushes behind. Breathing heavily, I grabbed her mouth and gestured if she had eaten any. She quickly shook her head no, and I felt relief wash over me. Realizing I was almost laying on top of her, my strong fingers still clutching her soft jaw, I let go and backed away. With my breathing calmed, I handed her my water pouch and instructed her to wash off and remove any of the toxic juices. She looked at me with wide eyes, her gratitude for my protection palpable. I knew that I would do anything to keep her safe and to protect her from the dangers of the wild. Lesson number 1. It is important to always be careful when eating in the wild. I would make sure I kept an eye on her and anything she touched these next few days, keeping her fed with safe and nourishing food. Her curiosity was almost that of a little sprout, touching everything that sparkled. As I sat by the fire roasting a rabbit for our dinner, I couldn't help but smile as I watched her trying to understand this strange new world she had fumbled into. I could tell by the way she picked at the berries near her feet and the mushrooms growing underneath a mound of moist leaves that she was curious, innocent, both dangerous traits to have. I leaned over and gently took her hand. Mother Nature provides, but you must be cautious, pale flower, I said in my own language, but wanting to express my thoughts aloud. Watch and learn from the other animals. They know what is safe to eat and touch, and what is not. I pulled out my satchel and showed her the different types of berries and plants that I had gathered over the years. "This one is good to eat, but this one will make you sick," I explained. "And always avoid these red ones. They are deadly poison." I mimicked a stomachache. She listened and watched intently, and I could see the excitement in her eyes as she learned more about this wild world. I was proud to be her guide and protector, and I knew that together we could conquer any challenge that came our way. Until, that is, I returned her safely to her home. As the moon rose overhead, casting its silver light across the forest, I couldn't help but gaze in awe at the otherworldly beauty of the stars. The constellations told stories that had been passed down for generations, and I was filled with a deep sense of gratitude for the land I called home. As I sat there lost in thought, I noticed that the woman was shivering, her eyes fixed on the sky above. I could no longer stand to watch her be uncomfortable, and I gathered her against me, wrapping my arms and furs around her to keep her warm. She looked up at me with wonder in her eyes, and I could see the appreciation in her smile. Together, we sat there in silence, taking in the magnificence of the night sky and basking in the warmth of each other's embrace. As I held her close, I felt a deep sense of protectiveness and care for this strange and beautiful woman. I knew then and there that no matter what tomorrow held, I would always be there to keep her safe and warm, guided by the light of the moon and the wisdom of the stars. As we huddled together in the warm embrace of my furs, I knew that a bond had formed between us. She was no longer just a strange and lost woman, but a cherished companion and a treasure to protect. The next day, as the sun rose, we set off towards her colony in search of her home. Despite my initial reservations, I felt a growing sense of attachment to this mysterious woman and did not want to let her go. But I knew that I could not keep her from her own people, and that it was my duty to return her safely to her home. As we walked, I could sense the longing in her eyes and the sadness that seemed to weigh heavily on her heart. She, too, it seemed, was hesitant to leave my side. The journey was a quiet one, as we both seemed lost in our own thoughts and feelings. As we neared her colony, I could feel my heart breaking at the thought of losing her. I had grown to care for her deeply, and the thought of never seeing her again was unbearable. But I held my tongue and remained strong, knowing that I had to let her go. In the days that followed, I watched from a distance as she settled back into her old life, but I could not shake the feeling that she was not truly happy. I longed to be near her again, but I also knew that it was not my place to interfere in her life. Even though I could not be with her, I made sure to keep an eye on her from afar, sneaking little trinkets here and there for her to find. A feather, the berries I had given her, even extra meat when the colonists struggled to hunt any game in the harshest part of winter. Each time she stumbled upon one of my small gifts, she would smile, and with that small expression my heart would warm. With that, I would have to be satisfied. But fate had a different path in store for us. One day, during the first blooms of spring, I watched in curiosity as she spoke to her fellow colonists. They embraced, and it appeared that they were saying farewells. Then, to my utter surprise and absolute humor, she exited her camp, carrying only a satchel and well-worn boots. Like the brave little bear that she is, she stepped into the unknown woods alone, driven by the hope of finding me once again. I briefly wondered if I should wait to come to her, curious to see how she would react, and a little bit angered that she would risk harm to herself again, leaving alone like that. But my heart was so full of hope and longing that I could no longer draw out our reunion. Leaping from the tree, I landed before her. Her startled surprise was quickly replaced with a beautiful smile as she took me in. I strode towards her, and without a moment's hesitation I gathered her into my arms, pulling her close to me. At long last I finally held her again, and my heart felt like it would burst with joy. I took her delicate face in my large, warm, tan hands and brought her full pink lips to mine. As our lips met, it was like a spark of electricity ran through my body. I felt the warmth of her body, the softness of her skin, and the sweetness of her breath. It was a kiss unlike any I had ever experienced, and I felt my heart overflow with love and happiness. With each moment that passed, I felt my soul become more entwined with hers. Our kiss was a declaration of our love and devotion, and in that moment, I knew that we would never be apart again. I held her close, reveling in the sensation of her in my arms, and I knew that I had finally found the missing piece to my heart, the matching spirit to my soul. She had chosen to stay with me, and we lived together in the forest, learning each other's language, hunting and gathering, and loving each other. That night, as we huddled together under my furs, I held her close and whispered in her ear, telling her of my love for her and my desire to keep her safe, that she would be my forever mate. To my great joy, she smiled back, and we sealed our love with a kiss. Despite the stark contrast of our lives, our devotion to each other was unbreakable, defying the boundaries of culture and tradition. Together, we proved that the power of the heart could conquer any obstacle, even those separating our vastly different worlds, leaving us to stand victorious in our unyielding love.